Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited about this. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for Netflix to drop a trailer for us for Death by Lightning. If you're not familiar with this upcoming four-part series, Death by Lightning, it's based on a fantastic book called Destiny of the Republic. It tells the story of the assassination of President James Garfield, but it revolves actually the book around three main characters. It's James Garfield, his eventual assassin, Charles Guiteau, but also Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, who plays a big part in the story of all of that. So I don't know if Bell's going to show up in the show or if they're going to mainly focus on Guiteau and Garfield, but it's a fantastic story. It's a fascinating time in American history because of all the political implications of what was going on. So the trailer dropped yesterday, and the show comes out in just a couple of weeks. So I thought what we would do is actually take a look at the trailer and see what we can learn about and talk about the scenes that we see. And I'm just going to break down the trailer and point out some of the stuff that I see happening. Having just read the book again, highly recommend it. I'll put the link down in the description so that you can check out the trailer without my breakdown, without my pausing and kind of nitpicking every little scene. Go ahead and watch the trailer first and then come back and watch my breakdown of it, or watch it afterwards, but either way, make sure you watch it. So let's dive into Death by Lightning.
There is an energy in the...
So right off the bat, and I'm going to be pausing a lot to break this down. So we see Michael Shannon's character of James Garfield walking in, and this is clearly the 1880 Republican National Convention. I see Alexander Hamilton hanging there, Ben Franklin. And understand, this is an important part of the story. It's deeply covered in the book. Garfield has been an 8 or 9-term congressman at this point from Northeast Ohio. He's actually where I live, was actually part of his district at one time. He's living in Menor, Ohio, which is kind of northeast of Cleveland, right up Lake Erie. And he goes into the 1880 convention to give the nominating speech for Ohio Senator John Sherman in his bid for the Republican nomination. Sherman's the brother of William Tecumseh Sherman, longtime Ohio senator, had served in the cabinet for a while. And Garfield is widely known to be one of the best orators in the House. He's a great speaker. He's one of the leaders. He's been a chairman of some powerful committees in the House. Probably would have ended up Speaker of the House at some point. Actually gets elected to the Senate from Ohio in 1880, but never takes office because he ends up president instead. But he goes in to give the speech for Sherman. There are three main candidates going into the convention. This is before popular votes for party nominations, and so it's done by the delegates. There's John Sherman from Ohio, there's James Blaine, and then there's Roscoe Conkling's character or candidate, and we're going to talk about Conkling more, I'm sure. Ulysses S. Grant, the former 2-term president who has been out of office for 4 years and is now running for the nomination again. And none of them can get enough votes in order to win the nomination, so they go like 30-plus ballots trying to get a nominee, and they just can't come up with one.
Eric, we're on the precipice of something desperately exciting.
So that was Charles Guiteau, and we're going to talk more about him and get into this a little further.
I made a vow to end the rot in...
So right there, this is Roscoe Conkling, and who do you see right behind him? Nick Offerman playing Chester Arthur. To understand the politics of 1880 is to understand that man right there in front, Roscoe Conkling. He's a Republican senator from New York. This is a time in history when the primary income of the federal government is through tariffs. Interesting topic for today. But and the primary means of tariffs in the United States is through the port of New York. And so as the senator, one of the senators from the state of New York, Conkling has an incredible amount of power because he has largely controlled who gets that really, really important job of the head of the collections for customs at the Port of New York. And Chester Arthur was kind of his handpicked man. Chester Arthur, when he gets elected vice president, is actually living in Conkling's house. Like, that's how close these guys are. Arthur is 1,000% in Conkling's pocket. And That's the kind of power that Conkling has. And when Conkling can't get his man, who is Ulysses S. Grant, elected, the best thing he can do then is to at least get his man Arthur to be on the ticket. And this is the balancing act that they're trying to do, the Republicans, is that they're trying to keep everybody happy. And so that's why they put Arthur on the ticket with Garfield, because Garfield was not Conkling's man at all.
Our party.
And that was James Blaine.
Vowed to end the rot in our party.
So there's James Blaine right there, who ends up Garfield's Secretary of State, and he's standing right next to Garfield when Garfield is shot at the train station. So here you have Blaine, you have Sherman from Garfield's home state of Ohio, and you have Conkling, who's the other real power and influence. And Blaine and Conkling are like polar opposites. They hate each other, and they both are vying for influence in this new administration.
President James Garfield.
So there we had Frederick Douglass introducing James Garfield, and a big part of Garfield's administration was going to be a continuation of a lot of the civil rights that Grant had fought for so hard.
All I want is to be a part of it.
That's Charles Guiteau right there, and you hear him saying, all I want is to be a part of it. Charles Guiteau, we've done videos about him, and I'll put a link down at the end. Charles Guiteau, clearly insane, serious mental health issues. Everybody in his family knew that. The man was a scam artist, but he was a lot of things at a lot of different times. And he goes into 1880 wanting to be a part of the election. He doesn't start out initially supporting Garfield until Garfield gets the nomination. And then he goes and starts like passing out pamphlets and giving speeches, and he thinks that he's the reason Garfield got elected president, because he once gave a speech to 20 or 30 people somewhere and passed out a bunch of pamphlets. And so you see that...
My name is Charles Guiteau.
Yeah.
What line of work are you in?
Politics.
So he thinks he's in politics, and he thinks he's way more important than he really is. I love this shot here because just about a month ago, I was at Garfield's house in Menor with my friend Matt Beat, and you're going to be seeing him doing a video that we shot there at the house in Menor, and this looks very much like the house. At the time, the house was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and if you go behind the house, I don't know, a couple hundred yards behind this house, there was a train station, and there was a rail line that ran right along Lake Erie there. And Garfield, like a lot of politicians of his day running for president, didn't campaign. He didn't travel around the country campaigning. He stayed at home, and people came to him. And so this is a great scene where we see people showing up at his house, and he would come out on the porch and give these speeches. And there was one time that an entire delegation of black Americans came, and he welcomed some of them into the house, and this was seen as like a really big deal at the time. So we see an example of that.
Jim, you're
There you go, and there you have the delegation, and it looks like, let me go back for a second, because you see the medals these guys are wearing. Those are GAR medals, among other things. And so these guys are clearly Union veterans from the Civil War, which of course was a cause that was very near to Garfield's heart. He had been a general in the Civil War, and a very promising general, and probably would have ended up commanding a corps or an army had he not gone into politics instead.
Jim, you're their leader. Your job is to inspire hope.
And there's Lucretia Garfield. I think they call her Crete, which was the nickname that he had for her. And we see a couple shots of Chester Arfield there.
Perhaps I can't change anything.
He will not.
Now, do you see his face there, right? This is an important one, too.
Perhaps I can't.
Because you got all these things going on around him, and Garfield did not want, or at least he very publicly said he had no interest in the nomination. They get to like the 32nd ballot at the Republican convention, and somebody in one of the delegations, might have been Wisconsin, switches their vote to Garfield, who was not running. And Garfield stands up and says, no. I'm here supporting Sherman. I gave the speech nominating Sherman to be the Republican nominee. I'm not running. But he's such a great communicator. He's a fantastic leader. He's a great at giving speeches, and more people start seeing him, much like in 1860 with Abraham Lincoln, as the compromise candidate, because the people for Blaine will not go for Conkling's man, who is Grant, and the people for Grant aren't going to go for Blaine or for Sherman, and you just have this impasse. And so finally, Garfield becomes the compromise candidate, and on the very next ballot, boom, he gets the nomination. And so I think there's part of him that's like, I didn't want this. I really didn't want this.
Can't change anything.
You will not run from the battle. Now go show those bastards who we are.
And you see their children. They had 4 grown children. They had 2 young children that died, and then 4 that lived to adulthood.
All I want to do is...
And there's Roscoe Conkling giving kind of like all right, I'm supporting you because I have to, but I know in the end I'm going to control you because I'm the one with the real power. And that is not what ends up happening.
Help.
And that was a scene. It looks like we saw the scene where...
All I want to do
is help. So I think this is James Blaine he's talking to, and Guiteau keeps showing up at the White House day after day after day, and then he goes to the State Department to confront Blaine. He's adamant that the speeches that he gave are the reason Garfield won, and therefore he deserves to be the ambassador to like Paris or to Vienna, which is absolutely just insane. It was never going to happen, but he's convinced he's earned it. And so he keeps confronting these people. And finally, Blaine just tears him down. And that's the moment when Garfield, I think Garfield actually meets at one point briefly with Guiteau. And when Blaine just rips him a new one and says, you're never getting anywhere near those consulates, that's when Guiteau switches from... I'm fighting for what I deserve to I'm going to kill this guy because he shouldn't be president.
help.
Who is this man? What is he doing here?
So there we have Chester Arthur, James Blaine, and Charles Guiteau all together. And I think Nick Offerman is an absolutely perfect choice for Chester Arthur.
You are a seeker, an opportunist,
Mr. President!
and a pest.
Eat shit. I'm attacked.
So that's where we have the scene where Blaine is obviously finally shooting down Charles Guiteau, who has been kind of treated like everybody else at that point. You've got thousands of people seeking jobs. This is the time of the spoils system, which is actually going to be started to be dismantled under Chester Arthur, of all people, which is amazing because he's a product of the spoils system, and he's kind of one of the main agents of taking it apart. Because he very much saw when he became president as an important part of his legacy to carry on what he thought Garfield was starting to do. And what I mean by that is that you have this huge implication of this incident that happens where there's an appointment made in New York to the Customs House without the say-so of Roscoe Conkling. Garfield makes this, and he knows that he's setting up a showdown, that he's got to demonstrate to Conkling that he's the president of the United States, not Roscoe Conkling. And so he appoints this guy that Conkling doesn't want. And it escalates to the point where the 2 senators from New York end up submitting their resignations from the Senate. Because Conkling figures, okay, well, the legislature who decides who's senator is just going to reelect me, and I'm going to come right back. And that's going to show that I have the backing of the state of New York and that Garfield can't do this. And he horribly miscalculates it because Garfield doesn't back down, and Conkling is not reelected to the Senate. And it's just this really amazing moment in the history of politics. But yeah, so this is where we see Guiteau being shot down, because up until then they're like, oh yeah, we'll get back to you, and that's what they tell everybody when they come to apply for a job. We'll get back to you.
Mr. President, I'm begging you, tell me how I can be great.
Men like us, we have to claw our way up.
I can't.
Yeah, so you get a little picture there of how they're trying to demonstrate that Chester Arthur has been in the pocket of the big political machine in New York. But he makes a dramatic change when he becomes president. People who knew him said that there was such just an overnight complete shift in the character of Chester Arthur when he was given the authority of the President of the United States. It reminds me a lot of way, way, way back in the day when you have Thomas Becket, who is the right-hand man of the King of England. And the king appoints Becket to be the Archbishop of Canterbury. And Becket, much to the king's chagrin, actually takes his job as archbishop seriously and ends up being a thorn in the side of the president. Same thing with Arthur. Arthur was thought to be Conkling's man, and he ends up tearing down the very political machine that created him in the first place.
And make an impact. There is a greater destiny out there for me.
This will show him. And the rest.
My name will be known one day.
Oh, so we got a clip there, real fast clip of Garfield in a brigadier general's uniform. He commanded troops in a pretty significant battle in eastern Kentucky that some of my ancestors were actually a part of on both sides. I had ancestors in the Confederate and the Union armies there, but like I said, he was rising to significance in the Union Army and was, I think, Rosecrans' chief of staff at one point. And absolutely, he was at the Battle of Chickamauga after he had been elected to Congress. And so we do get, looks like, some flashbacks, including a flashback to when he was in the Civil War.
Years from now, we will be judged by what we do in this moment.
Well, pollution is no solution. Institution, electrocution.
So there was Blaine kind of shaking his head, and then you see Conkling. These are all really important characters in this story. So we saw real quick there Lucretia Garfield slapping her husband. And that may be another flashback, and that could be a flashback to an incident that's covered in the book, which is when James Garfield and his wife Lucretia first got married. He had at least one, maybe two affairs. And, it's remarkable. I mean, we're talking about a guy who is our only ordained minister who was ever president, deeply religious man, deeply intelligent man, maybe one of our most intelligent presidents, one of our most talented presidents, certainly. But he has this affair early on with, I think, a New York reporter, a woman who's a reporter. And he comes home and he admits the affair to Lucretia, who stands by his side and basically just says, listen, the only thing I'm asking of you is that you cut this off and you never see her again. And he agrees to that. And from all indications that we have, from all of their letters, from all of the people who knew them, once that happened, Garfield became very devoted to his wife, and it never happened like that again. But I'm thinking that's probably what we're seeing there, is some indication of that. And now we're seeing a very famous photograph that was taken of Charles Guiteau while he was in prison. You got to remember, he's arrested. He's convinced. He had sent a letter to General Sherman, who at this point is the general-in-chief of the Army. And he was convinced that Sherman was going to bring the troops down and break him out of prison because he had done a great service to the country by shooting Garfield. And Garfield lives for nearly 3 months after he's shot, and he's basically killed by the doctors. And that's a huge part of the story, too, that's covered in the book, is this guy whose first name was Doctor. His name was Dr. Willard Bliss. And Bliss was an absolute quack and basically took charge and sent away all the other people who were trying to treat Garfield and just made an absolute mockery of Garfield's treatment. And Garfield would have survived easily with any decent medical care. Even the decent medical care of 1881 would have saved his life, but not the quack Willard Bliss. So while all this is going on, Guiteau's in prison waiting. Is he going to be tried for attempted murder or tried for murder? And he gets this photo taken of him while he's in prison. And his defense ends up being that he didn't kill Garfield, the doctors did. He is eventually hanged. So Charles Guiteau's brain, his brain was removed and put in a jar where you can, if you Google it, you can see photos of Charles Guiteau's brain. They cut it up into slices and sent different parts to different places so people could study it to see if they could learn anything about the psyche of an insane presidential assassin.
Fuck is Charles Guiteau?
Yeah, and so there's another incident there where Guiteau goes to church at the service that Garfield's at. And Guiteau, I think we saw a scene as well where Guiteau is stalking Garfield outside the White House, which absolutely did happen. And he had the gun on him. And he decided not to shoot Garfield that day because his wife was there. Garfield's wife was present. So that's why he ends up stalking him down at the train station. He walks up behind him and shoots him while he's walking with Blaine. Robert Todd Lincoln was also in the train station at that time. Lincoln was Garfield's Secretary of War. And the train station's gone now, but it was down basically where the Smithsonian is today, kind of on the mall. And you can see some placards that are there today that show you where the assassination took place. Okay, I am so excited about this movie. I can't wait for you to see it. If you have any other questions about any of the stuff that we see in the trailer or about the story, I'll probably be doing a further breakdown, and we'll take a look at some of the scenes as these episodes come out, so be watching for that. I'll put the link down in the description to some other videos that you can watch about Garfield, about Guiteau that I've done in the past. Thanks for watching.